Hi everyone, my name is Matt McGrath, and I am the writer of the new comic called The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic books and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Matt McGrath about his new comic book, The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur, available on Kickstarter. Matt McGrath is a comic writer based in Toronto, Ontario. He currently works as a content writer, specializing in educational marketing. He's also the co-founder of the Toronto theatre production company Bygone Theatre. Matt's short comics have appeared in Gothic Tales of Haunted Futures from Renegade Arts Entertainment, Strange Romance Volume 3, A Soul Divided Caged in Flesh from Stylo Media, and Called Into Being. His most recent work includes Everyday Fears and the self-published comic book series ID-10t Error. His latest comic book project with artist Jon Berg is entitled The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur. Based on 19th century Quebec folktales, The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur is a new folk horror comic about Louis Debraz as he vows to drag the devil back to hell. After walking across the country and following a personal unidentified vendetta, the mysterious fur trader Voyageur pursues the devil to a local celebration and dance where he hunts for fresh souls. Then the terror begins as Louis Debraz gets into the act. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Matt McGrath about his new comic book, The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur, available on Kickstarter. So, Matt McGrath, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time. Before we get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what are you reading today?
Sure, so I kind of have an ongoing reading project. My friend's dad had a huge comic book collection of like DC stuff from pretty much like the mid 80s, so post-crisis stuff up until the death of Superman. So I've been very slowly going through that collection. So I read all the Superman stuff he has and some other like little things in here and there. So right now I'm on his Hawkman collection, so the Hawkworld stuff with John Ostrander that kind of, I guess, really screwed up the Hawkman chronology. So I'm going through that right now. It's been fun. It's kind of very different than what I imagine current Hawkman being. He's a lot more kind of a left-wing revolutionary in this one. Like he's a kind of a champion of the people, where I guess like today, or like he's generally known more as like a right-wing kind of superhero. So yeah, I'm reading that. Yeah, I just started reading Lock and Key. One of those things that's, I've been meaning to read forever and just never gotten around to. And I got the whole collection on a really great sale, so I'm just making my way through those right now. So, yeah.
Nice. Lots of good stuff there for sure. So we're here talking today about your latest Kickstarter comic book project, The Acts of Louis Debraz, Voyageur. Can you tell
Yeah.
me, what is this story all about?
This is a story that I've had in my head for a long time, even before I knew what the actual story was. I'm a huge fan of like folk tales and Hellboy and Mike Mignola. Like I love all of that stuff. So ever since I've been writing, I've really wanted to create like my version of Hellboy. But I didn't really have an idea of what that would be. Just kind of like a nebulous kind of idea of just some guy in a trench coat or something walking around in a long time ago in the country and solving paranormal stuff. What prompted the idea was my wife is from Quebec, and I kind of learned a little bit more about Quebec history through her, especially Quebec folklore. And a lot of their folklore has to do with Catholicism, spirituality, and the devil. The devil's a character that kind of comes up a lot in folk tales, but I'm more of a devil that's kind of more of a trickster character, somebody who you accidentally promise your soul to them and you have to find a way, some clever reason to kind of outsmart them, to catch them in the details of the deal and reclaim your soul. That was kind of my way in with this kind of Hellboy story that I wanted to do. It would be This guy called Louis Debraz, who is a voyageur, fur trader in the 1800s Quebec. And he has this vendetta, unknown vendetta with the devil. Nobody really knows what his deal with the devil is, but all they know is this guy, Louis Debraz, is walking across the country trying to find the devil and along the way, solving kind of paranormal folktale problems for people. It was just my way of kind of adapting all these really cool folktales that I learned about Quebec. This first one is one of the more famous folktales from Quebec, which is Rose la Tulipe. So the devil comes to dance, where it's Mardi Gras and it's a nearby town is having a big party in this household, and a mysterious stranger shows up in the middle of the night or close to midnight and asks to come in. And then he's particularly taken by this young woman of the household called Rose, and he kind of woos her over and charms her. And there's a bunch of different versions of the story, but basically everybody kind of catches wise that this mysterious stranger is the devil, and either Rose is saved from pledging her hand to the devil, or she's damned and the devil carries her off. Yeah, that's what this story is about. It's an adaptation of that folktale.
My goodness, that sounds like a very interesting read, that's for sure. You are the writer of this project. Can you talk about who's helping you illustrate it?
Doing the illustrations is Jon Berg, so he's another Canadian cartoonist from Ontario. I've worked with Jon a couple of times. He did a cover for me for my last series, ID-10t Error, and we did a short story a few years ago before the pandemic for a Frankenstein zine where our story was it's the creation of Frankenstein's monster, but it's from the perspective of Frankenstein's nosy downstairs neighbor. So that's kind of just like a fun little gag thing. He's pretty busy, so he's been working on a graphic novel project, and he's also working on his own dark fantasy series called Scab. So I approached him, and he seemed really interested. He had other things going on. Yeah, I just waited a few months until he was ready to go, and earlier this year he had some space freed up, so he's gotten working on it. Yeah, so far it looks amazing.
Yeah, I bet. I met up with Jon at several events. I think TCAF and Fan Expo, and wherever there's a convention in the nearby Toronto greater area, he's there.
Definitely a GTA mainstay in the comic scene.
Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration process? Did you come up with the script first and then you said to Jon, away you go, or did you guys sort of bounce ideas back and forth? How did it work?
I came up with the script first before I knew who was going to do art. Yeah, it's interesting because originally I wanted to do this in the style of like a silent film. It's really what I thought would look really neat. So yeah, it'd be like the picture panels would be no dialogue, and then beside that would be kind of like a square panel that's just text. So it would kind of look like a silent film intertitle, and it would have been done on like kind of a 6 panel grid. So all squares, 2 panels per row, and so 3 of those on a page. But yeah, I guess getting into discussion, like it would have looked a little bit, I don't know, static, not as dynamic. When I got started talking to him, that's kind of what we decided. So I kind of went back to the drawing board. Well, not really the drawing board, but I redid the script, taking out all those intertitles and incorporating the dialogue into the actual panels themselves. I just think that kind of opened up some more opportunities for the book. Gave a little bit the plot some more breathing space, a lot more space to kind of add in those Magnolia-esque atmospheric panels where it's a quick shot of a close-up on a skull or something like that, or somebody's eyes, or kind of a creepy looking tree. Kind of going away from that 6 panel grid also made it a little more dynamic and versatile. So yeah, that's kind of what it's been like so far. Mostly just going back and forth between emails and kind of figuring out the story through there.
Because the story is set in 19th century Quebec, did you have to do any research for this project?
Probably not as much as I should have done. I work at a university here in Toronto, so I got access to a big, huge library. I discovered that there's quite a number of resources for folk tales. So I've been kind of digging through a bunch of different folk tales about Quebec. So Rose La Tulipe is really famous. There's another very famous one called La Chasse Galerie, which is a enchanted canoe. So all those ones are pretty easy to find online, but I kind of wanted to get into more nitty-gritty stuff, like more obscure folk tales. Yeah, I did a bunch of research for that, more so for later stories that I want to do, because hopefully if this Kickstarter does well, it'll become an ongoing thing. And so I've been doing more research now about Voyageurs. Yeah, making Louis a Voyageur is kind of like a late in the process development. So yeah, that's been interesting reading more about the Voyageur lifestyle and what it is they actually did, when they lived, the height of the trade, fur trade, and so yeah, that's been fun. But yeah, it's still ongoing. I still got a lot more research to do.
Because this project is being offered on Kickstarter, and that's something that you've gone to many times, I'm wondering what are the incentives you're giving to backers for this project?
Yeah, I guess the good thing about John being from, well, both of us living pretty much in the same city is that we can offer things like signatures from both creators on the book, where previously I wasn't able to do that because my artist would have been was in Brazil or United States or overseas. So yeah, that's one thing that we're offering is signature from both me and John in the book. And there's also a limited tier where John will do a quick sketch of Louis inside the front cover of the book. We're also planning on doing a limited edition risograph print. That's still something being worked on, but we're thinking of it's going to be a scene from maybe a later story or a folktale that I found interesting, but that's not really detailed or big enough to make its own story. It's maybe more so just like a singular image. Yeah, whatever this risograph print is going to be, it's kind of build out the world of Louis and all these the folktale world that he lives in. And then, yeah, just standard stuff. Past books that I've done, ID-10t Error, Everyday Fears, and John's also offering digital copies of his dark fantasy he's doing called Scab that I mentioned before. There's a big party scene in this book, so opportunities for like a lot of comic cameos. So that's one of the things we're offering. You can be drawn into the comic itself, I guess our top tier.
Now, you've hinted in our discussion that you've been working on more stories for this comic, but I got to ask you, what's next for you? What's your next project?
My immediate next project after this is something that's an idea I've had more recently, but it's basically going to be I'm calling a mecha slasher. So think Mobile Suit Gundam meets Friday the 13th is basically the short pitch for it. In this story, the kind of haunted Crystal Lake or the haunted house is a post-apocalyptic Earth. The sex-crazed teens are a bunch of teens and mechs who come from a colony out in space who kind of travel to this Earth to just kind of get away and relax and fool around on this abandoned Earth. And they discover that there's something still living there, which is this giant mech who goes around and starts slaughtering them one by one. So it's a story that really combines the big tropes of mecha anime as well as American slashers. That's next coming in the fall, probably.
Oh, so this year or next fall?
We'll see. Yeah, I think probably this year.
In time for
Yeah.
Halloween.
Yes, exactly.
So what about events? I know that typically when you get out and you got a book and you want to be able to promote it to people, you go to events, festivals, conventions. Anything on the horizon that you'll be attending?
Nothing on the horizon right now. Maybe MCX. I applied for it, so we'll see if I get in. But if I do, that's probably the only event I'll be at for the foreseeable future. I don't get about that much. I got these young kids that cling to me all the time, so I can't
Takes a
get
lot of
too far
time.
away from them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with everything that you have on the go with books and events and future events, where can people go online to find out more about you and the Kickstarter?
You can find out more about the Kickstarter. Go into Kickstarter and search for the Acts of Louis Debraz, so LOUISDEBRAZ. And I'm sure you'll have the link in the show notes as well, so you can check it out there. Check that out on Kickstarter right now.
Thanks to Matt for the chat. You can discover more about Matt McGrath on Instagram at stupid_Matt_McGrath. And you can get more information about the Acts of Louis Debraz Voyageur on Kickstarter. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators about making comic books and graphic novels. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media platforms. And you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to True North Country Comics at proton.me. And thank you for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2026.